You know, despite me singing the praises of film this year, there has been some absolute dumpster fire garbage released this year. And the crazy part is, I don't even go out of my way to see bad movies. I just go see movies I'm slightly interested in, and they just turn out to be awful sometimes. But I still saw enough awful movies this year that I felt compelled to make a top 5 worst movies of the year list. So this is the top 5 worst movies of 2024. And the main rule for this is it has to have been a movie I have seen. I'm not gonna really rank movies I've not seen, and I'm not subjecting myself to it despite how much of a masochist I can be with film. So a few movies, especially Borderlands, which is one of the worst reviewed movies this year, I did not see, unfortunately. And fun fact about Borderlands, I lost money on Borderlands. I bet on movies, and I have a very solid track record of betting on Rotten Tomato scores, and I bet that Borderlands would have an above 15% on Rotten Tomatoes. How can a movie be that bad? Genuinely, it's almost an accomplishment to have a movie that is below 15% on Rotten Tomatoes. So, before we start, let's review the triangle of bad film. First, we have offensively bad, and this is where a movie is made in such poor taste that it makes the film awful. Next up, we have incompetently bad, and this is where a movie is made so lazily and with such little care that you can just see poor filmmaking written all over it in every single aspect of the film. Lastly, we have hilariously bad movies, which is my personal favorite bad film, and this is where a movie is so bad that it starts to then come back and be good. And the thing is about good bad movies is that you can't try to be good bad. It just has to naturally happen from a perfect mix of all forms of bad. So without further ado, this is my top 5 worst movies of 2024.
Your hand, child.
Close your eyes. I've got you.
At number 5, we have Damsel. Look, I know I'm not the target demographic for what I would dub as a sleepover movie, such as this film or another 2024 film, Lisa Frankenstein, which I didn't care for either. But I don't think a target demographic excuses a movie from being absolute slop. I didn't choose to watch this movie. It was thrown upon me and I was forced to watch it, so I'm going to rant about it now. This movie is kind of like those knockoff movies from 10 years ago that you would see inside a Redbox, which rest in peace Redbox. But it's like you went to go pick up, let's say, The Expendables, for example, and then the only thing you see in there is The Dependables. This movie in its entirety is just a Hunger Games knockoff with a dragon in it. Also, this movie's lead actress, Millie Bobby Brown, infamously said this year that she doesn't like watching movies because they're too long. And my big question to that is, why are you acting in movies if you don't like watching movies, especially bad ones like this? Not even Drake, her biggest fan, could sit through this numbingly bland movie. What's even more insane is, and this came out while I was writing the script, this was the most watched Netflix original film this year, which speaks volumes towards Netflix quality. You people like this garbage? So, unless you're wanting to watch Millie Bobby Brown run around in a dark cave talking to a big dragon for an hour and a half, just avoid this messy movie. At number 4, we have Venom 3: The Last Dance. This year, Sony Pictures decided to release 3, I repeat 3, superhero movies that are spin-offs of Spider-Man and don't have Spider-Man in them. And this collection of films by Sony Pictures was almost like a terrorist attack to the film community, because if you don't hate superhero movies already, they made a valiant effort to make you hate them. Like, straight up released a hate campaign of superhero films this year. And our first superhero movie on the list this year is the third and hopefully final Venom movie. While I never cared for the first two Venom films, there's a charming goofiness to them that the movies sometimes embrace and sometimes elevates the fun to be had there. However, this third one felt very confused on what it wanted to be and whether it wanted to embrace the campiness of past films while also being a more dramatic and serious role for the Eddie Brock Venom character. I mean, they're playing David Bowie in the trailer, for God's sake. Where's Eminem when you need him? But this movie just doesn't know what side it wants to be on, and it just becomes so dull because of all of this. And I found myself so bored during this movie. Like, the movie doesn't even have a villain. It's just this blob bipedal dog creature that's chasing down Venom throughout the entire movie. The movie did have a few cool ideas that I was excited about that I saw in the trailer, like that stupid Venom horse, but the cool stuff that you did see in the advertisement is in the movie so briefly that it's not even worth going to. Like the Venom horse, it's only in the film for 2 minutes. But I can't even get that worked up or angry over this film because I just find myself more tired from these movies than anything. Like, let's move on from this. These movies, they're done. They've done their part. You made your money, Sony. But Tom Hardy, it is time for you to go on and do better things, Tom Hardy. You used to be an Oscar contender. Please stop doing these shit movies.
We're murderers. Isn't that what he taught us?
You don't get to do that to me anymore.
At number 3, we have our latest entry, Kraven the Hunter. I kid you not, when I went to this movie on its opening premiere, there was a grown man snoring very loudly throughout the first half of this movie because it's so damn boring. And to be honest, I wish I had been asleep too. And you know, we as a society, we kind of owe Morbius a bit of an apology. That was a dumpster fire of a movie, but at least that movie was so stupid and so dumb in every single part of it that you could laugh at it. And it in many ways started to reach back into the so bad it's good area of the triangle we talked about. And it is also just very funny that we were somehow able to trick a billion-dollar studio that we wanted more of it and that they should re-release it. But for me at least, Kraven the Hunter couldn't even be funny bad. It is just a slog of a film with middle school levels of written dialogue. A quote from Kraven the Hunter. "Then my grandma died, and I never saw her again." That is Shakespeare dialogue if I've ever read it in my life. This movie also doesn't establish a plot or a motive behind the film until the halfway point, which is almost an accomplishment on its own. And the action is so uninspired here, and it doesn't even try to use its R rating to its full potential. The main character also gets his superpowers by being mauled by a tiger, and then the tiger drips its own blood into Kraven's open cuts. And I'm no scientist by any means, but that's not how you get superpowers. That is how you get tiger AIDS. Aaron Taylor Johnson should be ashamed for being in this, and frankly, fire his agent, because he is definitely not in the running to play James Bond anymore, and honestly, he doesn't deserve to be. Like Venom, what makes this movie so much more frustrating is that Kraven is using a character that is a really good Spider-Man villain, one of his best villains in fact. And Kraven's actually probably the most popular Spider-Man villain that we've never got to see go up against him live action. And for this, it's just like a big middle finger to Spider-Man fans. I'm just so sick of these adaptations where we're turning comic book villains into heroes, or even in some cases, morally gray characters. It's an insult to their source material and into the people who wrote that source material. If you want a real comic book adaptation about a villain, go watch the Penguin series on HBO. It's phenomenal, and it does not make the Penguin a good protagonist in any way from beginning to end.
Let's try that again.
At number 2, we have Madam Web. The second worst movie of 2024 being Madam Web. Like, are you really that surprised? The only surprising thing is that it's not number 1. And for most of the year, it was number 1. Madam Web is incompetence in filmmaking in every single form. From script, to characters, to visuals, to editing, all the way down to its horrendous acting performances. It's really surprising just how bad the production behind Madam Web is, and you can just see it from beginning to end, and I think any viewer can catch what is going on with this movie. Like, the main villain of this movie, half of the things he is saying, he has to have his back turned to the camera, where it's obviously being dubbed because they had to change stuff on later on in post. How do you mess up a movie that bad? This movie is also a 2-hour-long Pepsi commercial for some reason. I kid you not. The main villain of this movie dies because a Pepsi sign falls on him at the very end. That's how this movie ends. This movie is worse than Fantastik, Morbius, and the original Suicide Squad movie. It legitimately has not a single redeeming aspect about it, and everyone involved in making this, especially the writers, should no longer have a career anymore. I somewhat feel bad for some of the lead actresses and a little bit towards Dakota Johnson, but at the end, if you can't read these scripts and do enough research to know that this movie isn't tied to the MCU that you're thinking you're becoming a part of, that's on you. I try to respect all opinions of film, but I can confidently say, if you ever meet a single human being who likes this movie, you should never trust that person's opinion ever again, because it is the most brain dead opinion you will ever find. In many ways, this should be the worst movie of the year, but upon a lot of thinking and contemplating, I realized one small thing. Unlike Craven, who cares about Madam Web? Like really? Or a single character in this movie. Not a single human being on Earth or its infinite other dimensions has ever asked for a Madam Web movie. And in many ways, it's just hard to even be mad about this. So imagine a scenario, if you will. Someone comes up to you and they give you a really, really bad burnt pizza.
Pizza time.
But the thing is, you never asked for the pizza, nor do you even like pizza. So how upset can you really be about this pizza?
For once in my life, I have someone who needs me. How about you, Arthur? Do you still think you're a star?
All right, it is number 1. Let's talk about this Joker 2 film. This one is hard to do. It really was, because I loved the first Joker movie. It was one of my favorite films of 2019. I liked the story, the performances. Joaquin Phoenix got an Oscar for that movie, and it tackled a lot of real world themes that reflected life in America. And I will even admit, I don't like musicals. But Joker 2 being a musical, when that was first announced, I said to myself, that is such a crazy idea, it may just work. It didn't. Joker 2 is downright a horrible film. From beginning to end, I hated every single part of this movie. And fellas, if you're ever looking to ghost a girl or just want to cut things off with a girl you've been dating but you're not really feeling her, I've got a quick solution for you. Invite that girl over. Put Joker 2 on, and fellas, she'll do the rest of the work for you. This movie has nothing to say and zero social commentary, but most importantly, the musical segments are not good. Joaquin Phoenix cannot sing, which is shocking because he was in Walk the Line, but Lady Gaga has to make her singing worse to then be on the same level as Joaquin in this movie. And the real stinger here is none of these songs in the movie were catchy. None whatsoever. Not a single song stuck with me, and I don't remember a single song. I just remember them being bad. I felt like I was in pain, reliving some of the worst karaoke I have ever experienced in my entire life while sitting through the musical segments of this film. It also takes a lot for a movie to genuinely offend me. But when the solution to getting rid of the Joker is to sexually assault him and that'll make him stop being the Joker, we lost the message somewhere, folks. The only people I can imagine liking this movie are overdramatic theater kids who are in middle school. Like, I genuinely can't imagine anyone else liking this movie. But yeah, this movie is complete garbage in every single way it's made. And it is one of, if not the worst sequel of all time. If you liked the first movie like I did, just do yourself a favor. Don't watch this. Act like it never happened. Joker 2, what's that? I don't know. I wish I could say the same. But you're here and you know it existed, so it's probably not going to happen. Because I hated this movie. It ruined my day when I saw it, and it ruined the first Joker movie for me. That is the top 5 worst movies of 2024, folks. It has been a bad, and I mean a bad year for superhero films. And if it wasn't for Deadpool and the Wolverine, the genre may have just been killed off. Like, they may have had to just scrap every future planned superhero movie after just how bad this year was. But I can say, if you are looking to scratch a superhero itch like I always am, The Penguin on Max, which has been fully released, is phenomenal, and so far Creature Commandos on Max is also a really, really solid series by DC. But in the comparison of bunched up bad films from each year, this has easily been the worst bunch of bad films in a long time. Like, I thought we had it bad with films like The Flash and Five Nights at Freddy's releasing last year, but boy, did it get worse this year. But the big question is, will next year have even worse films? And if so, how much worse can film get?
I'm Steve.
Well, I'll let you know next year.